to our professor, Dr. Manuel Roman, to my fellow classmates, good day everyone. I am Jessabelle M. Camilon, reporting the DepEd Order number 21, series of 2018, implementing guidelines on the allocation and utilization of the Human Resource Development Funds for personnel in school and learning centers. The guidelines aim to promote and support the professional development and career growth of personnel in schools and learning centers, as well as the teaching personnel who are performing managerial, supervisory, and administrative function at the schools, divisions, regional, and central offices. So all the DepEd orders and other related issuances, rules and regulations, and provision which are inconsistent with these guidelines and hereby repealed, rescinded, or modified accordingly. Rationale. First, pursuant to its goal of providing every Filipino with access to quality basic education, so the Department of Education is mandated to undertake programs, activities, and projects aimed towards the continuing professional development of its teaching and non-teaching personnel, especially at the school and the learning centers. Second, for this purpose, funds shall be allocated to support the implementation of this undertaking relative to the continuing professional development of personnel in schools and learning centers. Third, these guidelines aims to ensure that the utilization of the funds in the support of the human resource development in the Department of Education, particularly those at the school and the learning center, and those that provide direct support to this personnel, is strategic and efficiently and effectively managed. The scope. This guideline shall apply to programs and activities and projects geared towards the continuing professional development of regular or permanent teaching and non-teaching personnel in the public schools and the learning center, including teaching personnel who perform managerial, administrative, and supervisory roles at the school division, regional, and central offices, funded under the HRD funds provided in the General Appropriation Act or the GAA. So let's proceed to the definition of terms. So the purposes of these guidelines, the following terms are defined for the common understanding. Letter A, activities are output-driven undertaking with specific calendar schedule and resource assignment. So the objectives of an activity typically have corresponding tangible and quantifiable outputs. So an activity must be anchored on a program, project, and consistent with the DepEd vision and mission. Letter B, the competency standard. Refer to a set of knowledge, skills, and attitudes required to carry out successfully assigned roles, functions, and responsibility for a given position in an organization. Letter C, the continuing professional development or the CPD. So when we say CPD, refers to the inculcations of advanced knowledge, skills, and ethical values in a post-licensure specialization or in an inter or multidisciplinary field of study for assimilation, into professional practice, self-directed, and research, and are a lifelong learning. Letter D, the human resources development. It is a range of activities that covers continuing professional development of organizations and career development, which aim at improving individual and organizational productivity. Letter E, the learning action, cell or lab. So it is a group of teachers and other school and learning center teaching personnel who are engaged in the collaboration of learning session to solve shared challenges encountered in our school. Letter F is a learning and development system, refers to the processes and mechanism through which professional development activities and program shall be developed, managed, quality assured, monitored, and evaluated. So the L&D system encompasses 5 subsystems, namely, first is the learning and development needs assessment. Second, learning and development planning. Third, program designing and resource package development. Fourth, program delivery. And the last is the quality assurance, monitoring and evaluation, and technical assistance. Letter G is the learning center. Learning center is a physical space to house learning resources and facilities of learning program for out of school youth and adult. So it is a venue for face-to-face learning activities and other learning opportunities for community development and improvement of the people's quality of life. Letter H is the non-teaching personnel. So non-teaching personnel are employees who are not actually involved in a classroom teaching but indirectly and indispensably assisting in the delivery of the service to educational constituents and clientele. Letter I is the permanent position. Is issued to a person who meets all the minimum qualification requirements of the position to which he or she is being appointed, including the appropriate eligibility prescribed in accordance with the provision of law, rules, and standard promulgated in the pursuance thereof. Letter J is the personnel, are employees of the Department of Education who are occupying permanent position and are included in the plantilla of position of the department. Letter K, portfolio manager, is the official duly designated by the Secretary of Education who shall provide direction and strategies in the management, allocation, and utilization of the HRD funds. So the portfolio manager shall also be responsible for monitoring and evaluating portfolio success as measured by predetermined indicators. Letter L is programs, are strategic intervention anchored on the DepEd mandate, goals, and national policies such that implementation of program constitute or support the department's core business. So the Department of Education program are formulated to serve the long-term goals, serving all learners in appropriate context and continuously implemented until the goal are achieved. Letter M is projects. Our intervention relatively narrower in scope compared to programs. So projects yield more immediate result for the specific target or group. So project may be components of or anchored on the programs or independent of any program. Letter N is the school. School is an educational institution, private and public, undertaking educational operation with a specific age group of pupils or students pursuing defined studies and defined levels, receiving instructions from teachers usually located in a building or a group of buildings in a particular physical or cyber sites. Letter O is the teaching personnel. So, are the person engaged in teaching in the elementary and secondary level. So, the junior and the senior high school, whether in a full-time or part-time basis, including industrial arts and vocational teachers and all other person performing supervisory, managerial, or an administrative function in all school and education offices at the district, division, regional, at the central levels and qualified to practice teaching under the RA 7836 or the Philippines Teacher Professionalization Act of 1994. So let's proceed to the policy statement. So the Department of Education is committed to providing quality, accessible, relevant, and liberating basic education for all. Towards this end, and it will ensure that all personnel, particularly teachers and non-teaching personnel in school and learning center, are provided with the opportunities for continuing professional development. So, professional development programs, projects, and activities should be anchored on and aligned to the competency development needs of the personnel that are to extend possible based on the competency standard. So, the Philippine Professional Standard for Teacher or the PPST and the National Competency Based Standard for the School Head or the NCBSSH shall be referenced for the competency development initiatives for teachers and the school head respectively. So, at the school and the community learning center, the Learning Action Cell or LAC shall be the major strategy in addressing and continuing professional development needs of teaching and non-teaching personnel consistent with the DepEd Order Number 35 Series of 2016 entitled The Learning Action Cell as the kindergarten to the grade 12 basic education program of the school-based continuing professional development strategy for the improvement of teaching and learning. So last, all professional development initiative should likewise adhere to the processes and standards of the learning and development system. And now let's proceed to the procedures. First is the allocation of funds. Next is the eligible activities. And the last is the availment, release, utilization, and liquidation. That's all, and thank you. For the allowable expenses are, first is the board and lodging of the participants. Next is the payment of service provider of the institution as provide for the approved of service or memorandum of agreement. And next is the transportation costs and per dime. Next is the supplies and materials at standard cost. Next is the professional fees or honoraria of the non-DepEd resource persons. Next is the contingency allowance. And last is the other expenses in support in the above mission activities eligible provided the expenses are classified under the maintenance and other operating expenses or the MOOE.